And we are live. So, welcome to episode 100, episode 100 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got The Power of Bill Compels You. I say that once again. The power of Bill compels you. The power. Then we've
My
got
head's
John.
not going to spin around.
I was ready to start
I'm not
spinning
gonna
my head
vomit
for him,
into-
but
Yeah, I'd rather you didn't.
my
got
three vertebrae are fused.
Yeah, we just talked about that. You're barely holding it together as it is.
Holding it
Please
together,
keep all your
baby.
vertebrae in place.
That's right.
John K. Alvarez, a horny little devil. So congratulations on that. And then we've got Eric from Hey Internet. Eric here joining us for our 100th episode.
My pleasure, man. It's been a crazy ride.
Yeah, man. You know, Bill was here for number 2, and I think John was here for number 8 or 10, and you were here for like 15 or 16.
Checked. It was 16. Rob Zombie double feature.
Yeah, you guys have been here for the entirety of it, and you were in the comments long before that. So, yeah, I mean, here we are, 100 episodes. Who the fuck knew? So pretty cool, pretty neat.
Yeah, congratulations, man.
Thank you. I want to say a quick programming note. In the description is a link to my new YouTube channel for pre-recorded content. So please put, if you see it, if you see the link, if you see it in a live stream or, in the replay, hit the link and give it a sub. This channel will cover live streams only, and the other channel will cover pre-recorded content, and that seems to work better for the algorithm. Now, for episode 100, we had initially thought about An American Werewolf in London, but in the words of some of my students, it's kind of played out. I know it line by line by line, and, there's not that much to delve into, although it still is a fun movie and probably the go-to werewolf movies, considering this show is called An American Werewolf. But then I wanted to touch on something that maybe had a little more depth, something that we could, sort of deep dive into. And so my obvious choice for that was The Exorcist. So if you guys are ready, we can get it going.
Let us go.
Boogie Woogie. So, The Exorcist is probably considered by many to be the greatest horror movie of all time. There are other movies that rate up there, though, and I was thinking about a couple of them. A lot of people would put, and I say all this for a reason, a lot of people might say Jaws, for example, is the greatest horror movie of all time. I have nothing against Jaws. I consider it to be a perfect film. Absolutely nothing against it. I love it. I've owned it on VHS, DVD. Now I own it on Blu-ray. So absolutely nothing against Jaws. Another movie that comes up in the rankings, and I would put this above Jaws, though, is Ridley Scott's Alien.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott's Alien goes above that in just terms of on so many different levels. I don't want to talk about Alien. But the first and foremost reason for me is the performance of Ian Holm as Ash, who just plays an evil fucking little gremlin. He's just, he just throws them on. I feel it's a completely underrated performance. It's just, it's kind of overlooked. When we talked about Let the Right One In, we started talking about sociopaths. And then for some reason, for a couple of other podcasts that I was watching, the topic kept coming up. And one of the characteristics I learned of a sociopath is someone who has the inability to see anyone else's perspective, if I'm not mistaken. And that is just Ash to the core. Now, granted, he's a synthetic, so he's not a human being to start out with, which is part of the reveal in the last act of the film. But he does it in such a way that even though he's a synthetic, there's a thin skin of contempt that he seems to have for everybody on that ship when when everybody finds out, who he actually is. And so for that reason, I would put Alien above Jaws. But then we have this movie, The Exorcist. And the reason I would consider it to be above those other movies is the humanity. The humanity that's such an overlooked part of this film. I think a lot of people watch it simply for the purposes of the possession, of the spinning heads, of the murders, of the blasphemy, and all these different things. But it's the absolute humanity of it that wins it over for me. And in the very beginning, we start out within the first 5 minutes, we start out with the Lancaster Marin character, Father Marin, who finds out pretty much within the first, because it's been 50 years, we're going to talk about it. Within the first 5 minutes, he finds out he's going to die. For all intents and purposes, he's going to die within those first 5 minutes. And he's not going to die surrounded by family and friends. He's not going to die in some sort of blaze of action glory. And for some reason, when I was generating the notes for this, I kept thinking of The Rock, like that movie, The Rock, when all those Navy SEALs get killed and everybody just dies. It's not that kind of dying. It's going to be probably about as frightening a way to go as a human being can imagine. And he's so afraid, because he's a human being. But the minute he pulls that, he's a man, he's a human being, I'm sure he wants to live. But the minute he pulls that statue out of the ground, that little head figurine, he knows exactly what's going on. You see it in the next scene where he's trying to take his heart medication and his hands are trembling so badly he can barely get the little pills out of the container. He's trying to, keep it together. When he sees that blacksmith with the cataract eye, who's got the whited over eye that, we recognize as a flashback to another horror that must have occurred in his life. When we get to the clock inside the office that just kind of stops, all of a sudden, all these things are sort of cementing, just out of a day that he probably thought was going to be like any other. And then all of a sudden, within the course of, one afternoon, this path sort of opens up before him that just must be horrible to realize. And yet, within the next 5 minutes of the movie, he has steeled himself for the upcoming battle that he knows is going to occur between this, between himself, this human being, and essentially the devil. And so within 5 minutes, in the film, he shifted from this thing that, he's discovered he has to do, and then accepting what it is that he has to do, and just saying, well, without any words, let's get it going.
Yeah.
A great opening. One of the best openings of a movie ever. And the weirdest thing is that it's so scary, and it's made up of a bunch of mundane experiences that shouldn't be scary, but they are for whatever reason. I mean, the clock stopping, it's a little scary, but seeing a blacksmith, seeing a couple dogs fighting.
That's the part that always got me, was the two dogs fighting each other and you don't know why.
They're all just mundane things, but they're clouded over suddenly with this evil. And I always thought that was the scariest thing in the world, is that evil's not pea soup and heads turning around. It's just these mundane things with a cloud over them. And the reason that they're so effective is the sound design for this movie, which is brilliant. It won an Oscar, and within the first 5 minutes, you're already creeped out. These mundane things associated with these really sharp, well-made, well-crafted sounds that just drove this evil into you, and you're already shifting in your seat and going, "Oh shit, what's going to happen next?"
Yeah, it's the perfect example of less is more. You know, like there's hardly any dialogue at all. You know, it's just like people talking in the background, and it's all acting and like Bill said, the sounds, and you know something is up. Like again, that scene with that little shot of the two dogs. You know, this was the first horror movie I ever saw. You know, my mom is who got me into horror, and this is the first movie that she had me watch. Granted, it was the edited for TV version, you know, because I was very young, but that was the scene that always stuck to me. And she would always point that out. She's like, remember, animals can sense stuff, you know, because I didn't understand, you know, the religious aspects and stuff like that. But she always made that point, like, animals can sense stuff. Why would two dogs be fighting? And that's still a good example of just less is more in this gigantic, great opening sequence.
And it's a wonderful way to show how the character is without saying a word or hearing someone talking about him.
Yeah.
Because of just the way he reacts to it. He's aware of what's going on.
Yeah, and like you've said so many times, he's doing nothing but making it look interesting. You know, he's really not doing anything. He's shaking while taking some nitroglycerin medications. You know, he's climbing up some rocks. He's looking over and seeing some dogs. You're right. They are absolutely mundane things. But because it's Max von Sydow, you know, who's just, you know, on another level, you know, he's doing he's just, once in a lifetime performance. Hold on a second. We got a couple of comments. We got Mr. Dan in the house tonight. He's saying, what's up?
What's up, Dan?
We got the Night Watch Zone saying, hey, everyone, what's happening, man? We got the Goraphobe saying, what is up?
Hey, Goraphobe.
Down, Goraphobe.
Monty's in the house. This is his favorite movie, and he said, what's up, everyone?
Yeah, he's been excited since this was announced.
Excellent opening. And Goraphobe says the effects of The Exorcist have aged so well. Dick Smith, still a master. Pretty much set the bar for all who followed. Unfortunately, a lot of it. We'll get to that in a little bit. I snuck into the theaters to see The Exorcist. Good for you, man. Good for you, brother. Now,
the devil made him do it.
Hey, before you move on, there's this great scene in Lord of the Rings when they're being attacked by the Uruk-hai, and they've already repelled one group of Uruk-hai. And there's this scene where you look out through the woods, and there's just a whole other brigade of these goblins coming at him. And Vigo just does the most amazing acting I've ever seen, where he just shows how resigned he is. He's like, fuck, but all right, let's do this. And it's all in a split second. And it always reminds me of Max von Sydow, the same thing of acting without doing a goddamn thing. It's the same sort of reaction when he's standing there looking at the statue.
The best of the best. You know, another thing that we've talked about in other movies is the lack of understanding as to why any of this is happening.
Right.
We've talked about that when we got to the prophecy and Walken saying, you know, you're never going to understand when he plays Gabriel. You're never going to understand why this is happening. When we even talked about I trapped the devil, whoever it is that's behind that door says to the woman at the very end, you have all the technology in the world, but the one thing you can guarantee is that you're never going to understand why this is happening. Here, they don't tell you that. This is a level of, but they got it perfect the first time. They just there's no explanation. As for why, you know, this thing that started in Iraq, you know, has moved all the way to Georgetown.
Right.
You know, and has randomly attacked this family, attacked this small kid. You know, there's absolutely no explanation. I mean, it's just rather than continually telling us where I think those movies did an excellent job. This movie just doesn't bother to explain. You know, there's never really any explanation at all. Hold on a second. Monty, this is the first one, not the second one. Okay. The Devious Diva is in the house. The Exorcist is one of the greatest horror movies of all time, in her opinion, and Monty agrees. So that's a good thing. Now, that brings us over to, hold on. That brings us over to Georgetown. And we've got this story, this thing starting to develop. Chris McNeil, single mom. Reagan McNeil, kind of a child of divorce. And we've talked about this before, how Blatty, who wrote the screenplay and the original book, didn't make it a coincidence that Reagan was a child of divorce.
Sure.
And so that within the traditional sense of things, the father figure is absent. So the father figure in the traditional family serves as the protector. He is absent here. And in the movie is in the book portrayed kind of as a deadbeat dad. He just takes absolutely kind of no interest whatsoever in his daughter. Her birthday comes by. Yeah, exactly. Her birthday comes by. He doesn't even call.
Not only absent but negligent.
Yeah, he's not there. So there's a gap there. There's a gap there, and in keeping with the argument that nature abhors a vacuum, something seems to have moved into this space,
Right.
To open this kind of dialogue or rapport with this girl who is missing something.
Yes.
But it's not, what you would hope for. It's actually the worst possible thing. Reagan, and again, like we talked about with the Hereditary, these are people that don't really seem to discuss what's actually, bothering them. They're not discussing with Reagan her problems about the divorce. Mom's exploding on the phone, against the operator or anything like that. And, they aren't actually talking to each other. Chris McNeil seems like a good parent. She's there. She provides. She comes home every day. She's got a different kind of lifestyle. She's an actress. Okay, so she's gone during the day. But, there's something that, is clearly missing in this, in this family dynamic. And
yeah, I mean, she's well off. She's got a secretary and 2 servants in this big house in Georgetown, which is no cheap thing. So it's sort of making the point that, you could have all the money in the world, but if these really crucial things like a father figure are missing, the money's not going to make up for it.
And the father figure missing, that makes Reagan easy prey. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we're already starting to see at the beginning of the movie that Reagan is starting to demonstrate some odd behaviors. She's drawing these pictures, or making these clay statues of sort of a Pazuzu looking kind of, toy figurines. She's drawing these beasts with, like dogs with wings, and so you're never exactly sure at what point the Pazuzu or the demon has made contact with this kid. It's already in motion by the time it started, although it's starting to manifest itself and display itself a little bit more. And of course, the first thing the parents or the mom thinks to do is to take her to the doctor, and start hitting her with the Ritalin. That's the first kind of solution to this sort of thing, which I mean,
1973. I mean, understanding of mental illness and family dynamic and all that was still in its infancy. So his first move always is physical in that. And it even when you watch it today, all the medical stuff, which was cutting edge at the time, it looks so archaic, like torture devices.
Oh yeah, it's very scary to watch.
They're very cruel. The medical procedures are very cruel, and you get the impression that maybe the demon is enjoying that he's creating this kind of suffering, this kind of chaos, within the family, that on top of what he's doing, that what he's getting the humans to do is actually inflicting more pain on the kid.
Right. Well, that's the whole mission, is to destroy this innocence. And Reagan is such an innocent girl.
Because she's only, 11, 12?
Yeah, 11.
Yeah, 11 or 12. Yeah, something like that.
But
Yeah,
that's
and
the point of the story at that time. I mean, we were just talking about it before with the dogs fighting, and these were normal things that were like to the average person would be normal. The stuff that they were doing with Reagan, as torturous as it is or perceived now, and even back then, was normal.
Right.
And that's the point. It's not, and if you're going to take to the length of Pazuzu being involved in this and actually adding to it, enjoying the fact that Reagan's being tortured by humans, and when they think they're helping him, if it slowly starts building up, that it becomes way so outrageous and painful. But again, it could conditions you as the viewer. This is happening. It's a little more, and it's a little more, just a little bit more, and all of a sudden you're like, "Holy shit, where the hell are we?"
Yeah.
You know, that's the deal.
If you subtract the demonic or the spiritual at all, it's still a horrific movie.
Exactly.
A murder, and
Right.
the family falling apart. It just happens to also have this vomiting and the head spinning and the walk and all that.
yeah.
When it goes to the extreme. Hi, you want to see something scary now?
Yeah, right.
You know?
But if all that isn't there, and you're just depending on this devil, then it's not an effective movie. But the fact is that it all builds up in a specific way that when the devil does show up, you're just like on the edge of your seat, like whoa.
Yeah. And well, that brings us to one of the main characters, I think, equal to Reagan in this, and that's Father Karras.
Yes.
Father Karras, played to perfection by Jason Miller.
Yes.
Who is just this young but exhausted parish priest who's the school psychologist, the parish psychologist over at Georgetown. He's just got burnout from life, I think. And all the pain he has to deal with in dealing with every priest's particular problems, the questions of their faith, of the suffering he sees in the world. That there's that one scene where he's going to visit his mother, and he sees that homeless man on the street who asks him for a little bit of money, and you can just see kind of the revulsion on his face. He's a kind man. He's a kind man. He's a gentle man. He's not a harsh man at all, but he's just overwhelmed by all the pain that he constantly has to deal with every day.
Yeah, he's a tired man.
Yeah.
That's a comment on America in general at the time. I mean, 1973, we had just come through so much tumult, and it's still going on with Watergate just breaking and all that. It's enough to break you. And he's got the responsibility, at least at the time. Priests were seen as the guys who were responsible for carrying the average person across the finish line. And, and on top of that, he's a Jesuit, and most Jesuits were like, going for doctorates or master's degrees. So he's just carrying all of this in both the spiritual and intellectual way.
Yeah, he's highly into. I think he's a Johns Hopkins graduate or something like that. I mean, he's extremely well educated, but he is just burnt out. On top of the fact that he's poor, and his mother. Well, I mean that matters because his mother lives in poverty. Right. His mother lives in isolation, far away. He has no brothers or sisters to help him. Right. And so he's essentially leaving his mother. He lives in Georgetown. His mother lives in New York City. Right. On her own. He's got this obvious guilt going on there. She has no one to talk to. She can barely walk. So he's just got all the
like, why are you a priest? You could have been a doctor making all this money. So she drives that into him as mother.
That isn't him. It's the uncle.
Oh, yeah.
It's the uncle that does. He's got that dick-headed uncle who keeps reminding him, you're like a top-of-the-line psychologist. You could be on Park Avenue right now. Your mother would be in a penthouse. But instead, he's got this vow of poverty. So
well, what's the uncle doing for the money?
Yeah, I know. He's hardly lighting the world on fire.
Right.
Hold on a second. We got a lot of comments here. Hold on. Agoraphobe says younger folks don't realize how terrifying this movie was back then. I saw it about 20 years ago in a theater, real quick, and when it got to the crucifix scene, young people literally ran screaming out of the theater. I'll never forget that. They had no idea what they were going to watch. I guess they thought that they were just going to see some classic horror movie. And when it got to that crucifix scene, I remember like 4 girls ran screaming out of the theater.
Well, I'll tell you.
I remember seeing it for the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I like I said, when I first saw it, real young, I saw the edited version.
Right.
So, and I'd seen it like tons of times before I got to high school, and then I finally got, I got the book. And when I got to that part in the book, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then when I finally saw that they actually had that part in the movie, yeah. So I can imagine why those girls were running away. It was just
My parents wouldn't let me watch it. My parents wouldn't let me watch it, so I was like, okay. I snuck into a pile of books that they had read in the attic. I knew that it was in there, so I read it. I was
Oh, nice.
Yeah, dude.
I remember I
makes-
was
that
2
makes
years
a good
when it
sleeping.
first came out. I was 7.
Monty says you should have seen all the people freaking out in the theaters during certain scenes of the movie. Yeah. I saw some of that, but not during the original. This was about 20 years ago. And we're coming up on 50 years next year. So I'm sure they're going to release it again. So that'll be cool to see.
I told you what what happened to my 2 sisters and my cousin when they saw this movie. They turned their backs to it because they couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
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 That was back in 72.
They used that as a marketing ploy where, got people interested because, hey, these people are passing out. Come see this movie. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Which also happens to the way the movie was actually told. Again, that build up. By the time it was exploding, if people couldn't take it, they're down. They're down for the count.
So the diva says, as someone of faith, it's insightful that Father Marin explains to the younger priest why he believes this is happening. Yes, you do get some kind of an explanation as to why this is happening. Sorry, the younger priest, he's told Satan will go after the innocent to shake your faith and to make people feel that, there's nothing worthwhile in humanity. Yeah, I remember that.
So the target's not really Reagan. The target is everyone around.
Is everyone else
around him.
Yeah, to make this person suffer and to make you all watch. Still terrifying. Yeah, absolutely. Captain Howdy offers friendship and understanding to Reagan, who's going through a confusing time. Yeah,
absolutely.
Which they actually got into a little bit when we got into that series.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got into the Captain Howdy character in Reagan. My understanding is a lot of people lost it over the Spinal Tap scene. Before they even got to the exorcism. It's I just saw it this past weekend, and that's ugly to watch because she's clearly in pain. You're not used to seeing a child suffer. You might, medical procedures, you wouldn't think of them typically as, like Bill said, these mundane kind of things. But Friedkin does it in such a way, and I guess Blatty did it in his story in such a way as to make almost everything horrific. These everyday things that you take for granted, going to the doctor. Yeah, I mean, it's awful to watch. And then you have to watch the mother. She's watching Reagan, suffer and cry as that machine is just, and the needle goes in her neck, and it's just.
I always thought that was funny. After all the medical procedures, then they went to the hypnotism. And her reaction was almost like, "You motherfuckers put me through all that, and you could have just been asking me questions." And she grabs the guy.
Just the look she gives him.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, at that point, it's not right because slowly, after the medical, procedures kind of fail, and the doctors are just. You can tell, they're not being portrayed as, the most competent people. They're just like plucking answers out of the ether. Oh, try this and try this, and it's
called educated guess.
Right? Yeah,
it's pushing that to the edge where if you can't explain something scientifically, all of a sudden you see all of those things fail that we depend on, and it's like that crumbling of the edges.
One of the things that I thought that was interesting about this, though, is that how the storylines kind of crisscross. Like a lot of the main players don't start to interact with each other until well into the second half of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You're seeing Chris and Reagan. You're seeing Father Karras. Maybe a little bit. You start to introduce the Lieutenant Kinderman. Or what's going on with the Burt Dennings. character, this kind of thing. It's
Friedkin
probably a
knows
good
how to make a
75
movie.
minutes into it before they start to, crisscross.
Right.
When she finally asks Karras for help. And by then, things have the bottom is just dropped out. That section of the book where she starts to ask Karras for help is called The Abyss.
Right.
That section of the book where it finally gets to the point where she goes to a priest is called The Abyss, because it's just...
It's because it's so hard for a modern atheist person to break down and go, okay, I will try this thing that I consider voodoo or a witch doctor. I mean, she says, am I supposed to go to a witch doctor?
Yeah. I mean, that's dropped out to the abyss. At this point, Karras's mother has ended up in a psychiatric hospital. She's, because she's just alone in the house, and I guess she's poor, and maybe she doesn't have the proper kind of insurance for medical care, and that's just an awful scene. Because he's stressed to the max, and all these people in the hospital are grabbing at him for a blessing, because a lot of mentally ill people gravitate towards, like God figures and things like that. So he just becomes like a target for everybody the minute he hits that room.
Right.
And he like snatches himself away from half those people just to have his mother, probably his last interaction in life with his mother is just this horrible thing. Where she blames him for everything, as to how she's ended up in this place. All of these people are just
almost biblical, but I won't get into that.
What do you mean?
Just the grabbing at Karras.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
In the Bible where they're grabbing at Jesus and
see my eyes, I can hardly see. See
there
me stand, I can hardly walk.
Yes.
That's
what I'm talking about.
I felt too.
Yes.
Is that Jesus Christ Superstar?
Yeah. Well, it's in Jesus Christ Superstar, but it's part of
where they would swarm Jesus as an example in one of them, and he gets so tired that the apostles have to pull him away. Because he can't do anymore. Per se, and he still keeps going.
Well, because that's what's going on. He just
right.
I think the reason he's lost his faith is because he sees all this suffering, and he just figures God has abandoned the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And God has also abandoned him.
Right. He can't even. He's a man of God. He's a man of faith, and he can't even get any help with his mom.
No.
I think that's like the straw that broke the camel's back for him.
What do I have to do?
Yeah, that's a common thing. I mean, people feeling like the movie Silence. Why is God silent in times of trouble? It seems to happen all the time for some reason.
I'm covering for tomorrow's show for Frailty, and this recurring idea pops into my head that these things that God can ask of you can be cruel. That these tests are they're cold. They almost seem a little unfeeling. Because you don't understand.
Right.
Because you don't understand, and so when you're in the moment and these things are happening to you, as a human being, you could understand why someone could just lose it.
There was a scene that was written in a television show around that same time where a guy walks into a hospital and says he's Jesus Christ, and the shrink is talking to him about trying to bring him back, and the last question the shrink asked was, does God answer every prayers? And the guy says yes. Sometimes the answer is no. I mean, a lot of this type of discussion about religion at the time, especially in the 70s, yoga was starting to come into practice at the time. A lot of other religions were coming in at the time. But the questioning of faith, which is what adds to this priest who does everything right, what he's supposed to do, and he's still suffering. That's
Blatty knows it from Blatty knows it from personal experience. He was a Jesuit, or at least studying to be a Jesuit before he became an author.
I watched this. Actually, I should mention this. I watched this because I've seen it so many times. But I watched it this time with Friedkin's commentary. And he said, the most important point of this film to him was the mystery of faith. That all of these things can happen, as you scramble for a reason why. Maybe not understanding until the very end, why these sorts of things have happened.
Right.
You know, and that these storylines just keep crisscrossing.
Yeah.
You know, you know, you go from Reagan and she's suffering, and then, you know, he's suffering, and then, you know, Reagan, you know, has that outburst at the party.
Right.
You know,
no one person's perspective can grasp the whole picture, but
Yeah.
seeing all those storylines intersect, you can kind of piece together the whole picture as
why they're coming together.
Person watching it.
Yeah,
that goes right back to the book of Job, like, you know, trying to explain, like, you don't know this because you can't understand it all.
Yeah.
And I like how, like you said, you know, there are all these crisscrossing stories and they don't meet till halfway through the movies. That way you get so attached to these characters.
Yeah.
So when they have to finally work together to try to save not just this little girl, but, you know, the family themselves, you already know, no pun intended, they're going to be put through even more hell. You're already attached from them, and then that helps you root for them even more as it gets so much worse.
There isn't a single character in this movie that you don't give a shit about.
Right.
Right.
You know, there isn't one. I mean, even Carl, the manservant, and his wife. You know, all of these people that are rushing to selflessly sort of fill this gap, you know, to protect this kid. You know, all these surrogate fathers, you know, that sort of appear. Karras, you know, Marin at the end. You know, Karl, Kinderman. You know, all of these people that are trying to, save her, you know, or at least get to the bottom of what's happening here. One of the most understated roles in the movie is Lee J. Cobb.
Right.
As Detective Kinderman. When he shows, that's just one of the best scenes in the movie, when he shows up to her house after Burke Dennings has died, which you never see.
Right.
You never see the death of Burke Dennings. You just find out about it. But then he has that interaction with Ellen Burstyn, where he's essentially telling her that he understands, because he's smart, you know, he's just a great detective, that he understands that that kid somehow probably ended up killing Burt Dennings without accusing her of it. You know, he's kind of laying his cards out one at a time. He's kind of going through the whole deductive process, you know, while he's talking to her, you know, without being accusing at the same time. And yet Ellen Burstyn is trying to maintain this poker face, you know, because she understands now at this point that, you know, Reagan has probably killed this guy.
Right.
Is just, that's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie.
Right.
He's really great. And then, you know, later on, 20 years later, he's played by George C. Scott.
Yeah.
You know, who takes it to another level. But I mean, you know, Lee J. Cobb is just fantastic in this.
Yeah. I think, and Mike, I think that's one of the things that gets, I don't want to say forgotten, but overlooked in this movie a lot. Especially when it was with Reagan possibly doing the murder type deal. We always remember what happened to her. You know, the torturous spinning in the bed. And, you know, we also don't forget that she became a vessel of Pazuzu to do these acts type deals. And you forget all about that because you concentrate on the visual stuff. It's the stuff that you don't see.
Yeah.
That's also scary as hell in this movie.
Yeah, like you never see Burke Dennings die or the way that he's described to have died.
Right.
And yet somehow it's completely horrific.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
it's just completely horrific to hear him have that conversation, Kinderman, with Father Karras, you know, where they start to intersect.
It's just like the greatest old school horror movies where all the greatest deaths are off screen, you know?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Monty says you never saw a film like before. That's why it was so successful. Yeah, this broke a lot of barriers in terms of what was considered possible. I think at the time, I don't think people had these kind of ideas in their filmmaking. If they did,
what did Friedkin do before and after this?
Do
we know?
He did the French Connection.
I didn't look that up.
He did a lot. He did both French Connections. He did To Live and Die in LA. He did a lot of movies. I have quite a bit of Friedkin. He did that great movie, The Hunted, that I love with Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro. Yeah, he did a lot of good movies. TV show is great. Go ahead, Bill.
I watched an interview with him talking about the modern horror movies, especially the possession movies, and he has nothing good to say about them. He's just like, they're all rank amateur chump movies.
Exactly.
To, you know, what goes on in his head.
Right before this, the movie he did right before this was The French Connection.
Right.
Okay.
And then he did To Live and Die in L.A., which was good. He did The Hunted, which, you know, I really like. And then I think, Mike, I don't know, I think you might have mentioned it. He did Bug with
Oh, I love that with Ashley Judd.
Ashley Judd.
Yeah, that's a badass movie, man. Yeah, Friedkin still got it together, man. The Gorephobe says definitely about the mystery of faith and our not understanding why if God is so loving that he would allow this to happen to a little girl. Yeah, it would have been great to have seen Lee J. Cobb in Exorcist 3. That would have been really cool.
Oh,
this is Karras. That's an interesting take. This is Karras' journey, not the McNeils and not Marin's. That's
I can see that.
Yeah, there's something to that.
Valid, but you're seeing it from all different perspectives at different times. The beginning of the movie is all Reagan's mother's point of view, and then it changes.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
it's also good horror story or telling, the book and in the movie. I agree. It could be anybody's journey because there are so many different journeys that are happening.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, we were talking about it before, though you didn't like the movie. If you read the book or saw some of the earlier movies of Dracula, how many storylines are going on that eventually cross together at the Abbey? You know, it's all these people coming together. It's funny because I was watching this with my older nephew, and he goes, "Of course they're all getting together. Misery loves company." Is how he referred to it as. And I said, well, that's an interesting take on it. Because he turned around and said, his only complaint about the movie is that he said, I can see some of the wires, you know, with the technical aspect. That's how he refers to it. I can see how they were doing some of the technical stuff. And I said, well, maybe they should reboot it with CGI. And he said, no, it wouldn't be as good.
It would be a lot less. It would be a lot less human.
They are doing,
and that's what he was saying. He was saying he was getting into the human characters that he was.
It's not clear if this reboot is going to be a Reagan McNeil story. It may be. I hope they don't do it. They're going to, but
I'm sure they are. And I know Ellen Burstyn's returning.
Is she really?
Yeah, she signed on. I don't know what she's playing, who she's playing, but I know she has signed on to be, and it's a supposed trilogy.
The series almost screwed it up. I mean, the series was really actually pretty good, and I went into every episode. Yeah, the first season. I went into each episode expecting them to shit on it, and I was pleasantly surprised every episode.
No, there's a lot of people who respect this movie. I know some people poo-poo it a lot because they think it's too old now, but there's a lot of other people. They look at this like, you know, like reading an old classic.
The only people that I know who actually sort of, you know, poo-poo or hold their nose up at this movie are people that don't understand it. Because if you ask them why, and I could pick some names, but I'm not going to. If you ask them what it is about the movie, they pick like the hokey or like the grotesque. They'll make some grotesque quote, you know, from the movie. And I'm like, you've completely missed the point of the film.
Right.
You know, that has absolutely like you've picked like the most superficial thing that, you know, this thing is like, you know, 1,000 leagues and you've gone down like 6 inches into the water.
Right.
You know, you think you understand, you know, but it's, you know.
That's like people who all constantly misquote the Casablanca. Just play it again, Sam never gets said, but that's the only thing they know about the movie. And
right.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I mean, it is true. I mean, and we were talking about this with like Hereditary. It's the human frailty or the human faults that make this a good movie before you start to get into the paranormal.
Right.
A family reeling from divorce, a priest, you know, losing his faith, another priest who realizes at the beginning of the movie that he's going to die, a master detective trying to solve a murder.
Yes.
These in of themselves are 4 separate plots that could easily be 4 separate movies.
Right.
You've blended them together, and I think blended is the correct word to use here. And then on top of that, you've added maybe for the first, well, not for the first time ever, but you've added on top of that the overtly demonic.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, how could you not be knocked on your ass by that?
Mm-hmm.
How can you not be? You know, we get to the point where, you know, Karras starts to make the turn where he goes to visit Reagan for the first time. And he's trying to approach this as a psychiatrist.
Yep.
Right.
And then he hears that quote, "Can you help an old altar boy, father?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, just for a split second, he pauses, you know? You know, but no, he takes it back. Then, you know, the demon's trying to tell him, you know, even the demon is trying to, you know, your mother's in here with us. It's trying to get you, it's trying to get him to see that this is really happening. But his rational mind and the fact that, you know, he's kind of spiritually broken at the time just really isn't allowing him to do it.
Right.
There's a great quote in the book when he first comes to visit. The demon looks at him and it's like, "Oh, they sent you? Like, we've got nothing to fear." It literally says, "We have nothing to fear from you."
Yeah.
Okay, you know, come on in, you know, let's talk.
That's
you know,
cool.
because I guess at first it's all wary, and that is, I'll never forget that line. It looks right at him and says, "Okay, it's you. Okay, no problem."
You're getting me real interested. I haven't read this since high school. And the thing is, I got this off Amazon, this hardcover, and it's 40th anniversary edition.
Nice.
And Blatty here says he's expanded it. He's added new dialogue. There's a new character and a new scene just for this book.
Oh,
but
really?
But even without it, I've been skimming through, like when you talked about, you know, what Act 3 is called, and just that line. It's like, it's getting me pumped up, like wanting to read this. And that just shows how good the movie is, because I've always said that if a movie is based on a book and you love the movie, that should make you want to go read the book, because the books are usually better, in my opinion. But then again, you can use your mind and all the stuff that they can't put in the movie. Pretty much, you know, it's all fair game in a novel.
What we've said consistently on this show is that the very best horror movies, and we talked about this with Carrie, you know, and all the different movies that we've covered, is the ones that have very human problems.
Yes.
Exactly.
Before you get into any of the supernatural or the paranormal, we talked about that with Hereditary.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I was thinking
you know,
the same thing. Hereditary is not about devil worshippers.
No,
it's totally about something completely different.
Yeah, The Witch was the same thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It had absolutely nothing to do. You could have kept that witch out of there. You could have kept, you know, that whole witch's coven out of Hereditary, and you still would have had a phenomenal fucking movie.
Right.
But when you make those characters have those very human failings, and then add the supernatural on top of it, then you've got the very best stuff.
Right.
Hold on a second.
Completely out of control.
Yeah, Dan says Friedkin did this, The French Connection, and Sorcerer in a row. Unbelievable 3-movie streak.
Yep.
Agoraphobe, Ellen Burstyn is revising her role. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about playing. She's going to be playing Chris McNeil, I guess. There's no word of Linda Blair. Yeah, I follow Linda Blair on IG, and she hasn't made any reference to it. I don't know. I mean, that's got to be.
She's had such trauma in her life because of that guy.
Because of this movie.
Yeah.
You just read how the death threats and all that stuff that just came out. Like, remember, these are death threats towards like an 11, 12-year-old girl because of this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Well, they did recast. They did recast once, and they did a good job with it in the series. I won't mention any spoilers for people who haven't seen it.
Right.
I doubt Blair would do it. I would get who's Lulu Wilson? I don't know who that is.
Never heard that name.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out. Lulu Wilson. So,
in that scene that we were just talking about, where Karras first talks to the demon, that thing with the drawer, and he says, "Do it again." And the demon's like, "No, that's too vulgar a display of power." That's part of the game, and it also goes on the side of God as well. They say that if God revealed himself, we would have no choice but to accept him, and that turns you into automatons. It's the act of having faith and making that leap that is important, and it's the same thing with the devil. You know, he could easily, you know, picked Karras up, threw him around the room, and put the fear of God into him. But instead,
he's toying with them.
He's playing.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's great. You mixed Linda Blair's acting in that scene with the woman who does the voice of the demon, and it's perfectly synced up. And like you said, she opens the drawer, do it again in time. Like I'll show you what I can do, but just wait. You just walked in the door. We got a lot more to play.
It's totally about a psychological cat and mouse game rather than being evil right out of the gate.
Yeah, one of the scariest parts
if you're alive for a millennia, it's more about amusing yourself and playing this game rather than anything else.
Yeah, we talked about that. I think we talked about when we talked about Dorov, and then I trapped the devil. This is the long game.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the ultimate version of the long game. And I said that when Dorov played, in the third movie, and I said, he might be millions of years old.
Yep.
In absolutely no rush whatsoever. I trapped the devil. Okay, I'm trapped behind this door. And like you said, Bill, I'm trapped behind the door. Okay.
You can sit there until that door disintegrates. It doesn't matter to him. It's like a day.
Yeah, it wouldn't even. Yeah, you wouldn't even blink.
Yep.
Dude, I've been around for 1,000 years. You had me for 12 hours.
Yeah. And what does he do? I mean, in 12 hours, he gets that whole family to kill themselves.
Right.
Never does anything overtly supernatural, just talking.
Right.
Just talking to him through the door, he gets that whole family to kill themselves in the movie.
A lot of the thing of the overly dramatic devil stuff in the end is a reaction to what Karras and Merrin are bringing. It's desperation more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because he's about to be defeated and he knows it.
Yeah. It's the last resort. It's the last resort. He's pulled out all the stops. I just want to say one thing though. And Friedkin mentioned this when by the time Karras gets to the scene where he's performing the second mass.
Right.
I think after the second visit, he's starting to believe.
Yeah.
Slowly, this thing is shocking his system. It's a shock treatment.
Yes.
It's not just the shock treatment, the exorcism in the sense that it's shocking, the thing out of Reagan, but he is slowly being brought around by this shock treatment and being confronted with this demon, and where he takes the communion, and says, "This is my body, and this is my blood." And for Friedkin, he said that was the most important scene in the movie, where he begins to make the turn, and to see this mass once again as not just an empty gesture,
right?
Or a series of words, but that, that actually is the body and blood of Christ.
Yep.
Which slowly begins to rebuild his strength again, where he can get to the position where he's ready to ask for permission to conduct the exorcism, even though he doesn't know what to do from Adam.
Right. Like my father used to turn around and say, there's a point when you've been going through the motions, when the motions suddenly have meaning. And when I see that, I think of that all the time, because in the beginning it's just a root, kneel down, stand up, say the prayer, kneel, but then when he realizes what is the possibility out there, suddenly all those words are going to have weight.
Right. Because if there's a devil, then
right. And it's not some big flash of light. It's like just a click in your head, like C.S. Lewis said when he took a motorcycle ride, and by the end of the motorcycle ride, he decided, you know what, I am a Christian. It wasn't any angels and lightning. It was just boom. Okay.
Well, I mean, in this case, it's I got cut off for a second there. It's if there's a devil, then there must be a God.
Right. That too.
Like I'm literally in the room talking to a demon. That must mean that, I mean, this is the body and blood. Yeah, this is the body and blood of Christ.
Best jump scare ever, though, man, when he's listening to those tapes.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and the phone rings. Yeah.
That's a great jump scare.
God, this is real. And then boom, the phone rings. And again, mundane, but scary as hell.
Yeah, and
pick up the phone. God's calling.
for 50 years, for 50 years later, for it still to have the, I jumped. I forgot because I don't watch this very often. You know, it's not one of those ones you pop in like, you know, every other week or every couple of years I might watch it or something like that. But I mean, I've forgotten, like I jumped when the phone rang. It scared the shit out of me for a second, you know, and I've seen this probably 20 times.
Here's the thing.
You know, I've read the book 3 or 4 times. You know, it still got me.
I rewatched this. I knew that was happening, and it still got me.
Yeah. Which is a great sign for a scary movie.
Agoraphobe says Mercedes McCambridge. Yeah, she was the voice. She was the voice of the demon. Yeah, Ryan knew that. Ryan knew that part. Okay, so if Ryan was here, he would have pointed that out. But thank you, Gore. That's just like the movie called Devil. Oh, that's a good movie.
Yep.
Yeah. Filmed it. Locally filmed.
One in the elevator.
Yeah, they're all trapped in the elevator.
And Night Shyamalan,
yeah.
Great movie.
Oh, Sincere's here. Sincere Wilcox. Hey, Mr. Mike, one of my old students. Sincere's here in the house tonight. Good to see you, Sincere. And he says, hey. Lulu Wilson. She was an Annabelle creation. Becky. And I saw Ouija. That was Mike Flanagan, Origin of Evil. But I got to check. I got to look her up on IBDM. So, I mean, at this point, you know, Karras is asking for the exorcism. But, you know, his higher-ups authorities decide that someone else with some experience needs to be in the room. But it's a huge leap for him.
Right.
You know, and you can tell that he's still uncertain. Even after all of this, he's still not, because the man asks him, are you certain? And he's like, no, not really. He goes, but I think it meets the criteria, you know, that's been set down in the ritual, you know, that kind of thing. He's still not 100%, which brings us back to Father Marin.
Yep.
Who's just a great closing act. I mean, he's just fantastic.
What a way to bring him back into the movie too, with just the way, you know, that iconic shot of him standing outside in the moonlight. You have that and then, you know, superimposed just the eyes of Reagan or, you know, the demon or whatever. It's just perfectly edited to bring that tension.
And for all the years that I saw this, before I saw it, because my parents wouldn't let me watch it either, I associated that character on the outside with being the bad guy.
Right.
You know, because it just, you know, I'm like, what? Because it's not very clear, you know, but it turns out to be, you know, I mean, Max von Sydow was probably 30, maybe 40, you know, but here he's playing a very aged and physically weakened guy. This isn't happening in Transylvania. It's not Salem. It's not the 17th century. You know, it's Georgetown in like 1973.
And home is where you're safe.
Right? Yeah, in your home.
Outside in the dark.
Yeah.
You know, and
this is in the middle of the woods. Yeah.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about, because every time I saw it when I was younger, it creeped the hell out of me until I saw the movie and then eventually read the book.
Right.
And went, oh, he's the hero.
And also, when they open the door to let him in, he's still covered in shadow.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Friedkin fired a shotgun to get Jason Miller to jump like that when the phone rings.
Yeah, I've read that.
Says, really?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's known to do that. I heard like there was conversation like after he yelled cut, I think Jason Miller like threatened him. He's like, "Don't you ever fucking do that to me again." So I know there's at you know jumping ahead after what happens to Father Karras, he's giving the last rites. And you see the priest doing that who's shaking. The reason why that actor is legitimately shaking because I guess he couldn't get his lines right. So Friedkin just like pimp slapped him 100 times to get him so overwhelmed, just so his hands are shaking when he's doing the last rites. Yeah.
That production is full of shenanigans like that. There's a scene where he tied a rope around Ellen Burstyn's middle to get the jump, her getting hit against the wall right. And she hurt her back doing that.
Yeah, she got slammed.
And
because she's very small. You know, you know, it's not like, you know, like a WWE wrestler or something who's used to taking a bump on the hardwood or something like that, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
it's like this little frail acting student, you know.
She would always joke about that. Like they had to do take 3 or 4 times. On the very last take, that's where she injured her back. And of course, that's the take that Friedkin put in the movie.
Right. Because the real pain on her face.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's legit. Now,
It's method acting. Method
yeah,
directing.
exactly. Yeah. Where's Martin Sheen when you need him? Jeez.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Now here's a question,
Mhm.
because Friedkin was saying that he was curious as to whether or not he has filmed the greatest battle scene of all time. It's maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but it's still a hell of a scene.
Yeah.
Like I said, not Transylvania, not Salem. The only weapons that they have are some holy water, the ritual,
Mm-hmm.
and their faith. That's it.
Right.
Basically, to go, because they're actually attempting to channel, the power of God
Mm-hmm.
to expel this monster out of this little kid.
And the build-up for this is so great because, we had the scene where Karras is, he's using science first. He's already got the upper hand over Karras. Like the scene,
Yeah.
your mother's in here with us. Would you like to leave a message?
Yeah.
That's an awful line.
Yeah.
And then the scene, like I think to me, everyone remembers the pea soup, the crucifix, the head twist, the floating in the air. In my opinion, I think the scariest scene involving the demon itself is when they lift up Reagan's nightgown, and in her skin, in her stomach, it says, "Please help me."
Right.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. That's showing how much power this has. And if you think about it, religious or not, what can these two priests do to fight something like that?
Yeah.
Right.
Because if it doesn't have a physical advantage, it's definitely got the psychological. And when Marin walks in, it yells its name. It yells his name out.
Right.
Yeah, Marin's not fucking around.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is even scarier after you find out that it's based on a real occurrence or supposed real occurrence, and that the writing on the body was something that actually was supposed to have happened. That just makes it all the more scary.
Yeah, that she's in there somewhere.
Yep.
That this little girl is in there somewhere, asking or begging, for someone to help her. You don't know what she's experiencing. It's left to your imagination.
Yep.
Right.
And it's an awful thing.
Mixed with that score in that scene, that's also what makes it terrifying, and how cold it is. Literally, you could see their breath.
Right.
Yeah. That and that's where Marin sort of comes into it, to make this argument that, like Bill said earlier, that's what the demon is there to do, to make you despair.
Right.
That human beings are garbage. Life has no meaning. It doesn't. There's no meaning behind any of the suffering that that Karras has been going through, or that this family has been going through. There's no rationale for that at all. Not even one that you fail to understand. There's nothing. And so if there's no reason for anything, then there's no reason not to do everything. Then what's the point? Why shouldn't I do this? There's no point to any of it.
Right.
Which is ultimately, Marin's rationale as to why the demon, attacks in this way. Hold on. Mario Jacobo is here. He said he passed ELA this semester. Congratulations, Mario. Good for you. All right. Agoraphobe, the Leap of Faith documentary is great. You can feel Friedkin's passion for this film when he speaks about it. But Bill is absolutely right in the sense that the demon is channeling everything, including Karras' own guilt. When he sees, his own mother there, is that really what he hears, or is the demon just sort of channeling like the voice and like finding his guilt inside of him somewhere?
Yeah, it's triggered. It's triggered in his own mind.
Yeah,
it's not really happening.
Yeah. I don't believe that either. No more than I believe, because his mother didn't strike me as any particular person that was going to hell.
Right.
She seemed very kind. She loved her son. you know, despite the fact that she was suffering, she was constantly asking what was bothering him. You know, so, you know, it's like what, you know, he says, they're lies.
Yeah, the poor old Greek Mona's not in hell.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it gets to him to the extent that he has to leave, which leaves Marin on his own. Which I don't know. It makes me sad in some kind of way that, you know, because he's shaken and he's rattled and his heart is giving out, and now he has to start the whole thing over again on his own.
Yep.
You know, his final hour is alone.
It's not telegraphed, but you kind of get the feeling that was the sacrifice moment in the whole thing. Anyway, that it's not so much sad. It's that, you know, all right, it's time. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen for the reasons to bring Karras to finish this.
Right, which becomes, I mean, the general goes down, and it leaves kind of the foot soldier.
Yep.
There to, you know, to take up the weapons and to do what he can do. Yeah, which kind of, you know, ends the way which kind of ends the way that it does. Which is again tragic.
Right.
That's the tragic one.
Yeah.
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 Although all that more heroic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not the one that you're expecting. It's not. It's,
Yeah.
And it could have ended with a very happy, yum, everything rainbow ending. Right? You know, but
no, it ends. It ends on
been based in reality a bit,
right?
And with all the, so what would be the more realistic ending? The two who were standing on the front line to save the child, or the two who are going to die? Or
yeah, I mean, goodness triumphs, but it comes with a heavy price.
Heavy price. Yep.
It comes at a very heavy price. One of the saddest things I've ever seen is that scene where he's at the bottom of the steps.
Yep.
And the second father, oh God, I can't remember his name, asks him if he wants to make a confession. You know, and he said, you know, at this point, Karras is practically a saint.
Yeah.
You know, and he's just, you know, he asks him, do you regret all the sins of your life? And you can't think of anything that he's done wrong.
Right.
You know, he's just suffered and suffered and suffered and suffered. And in the end, he suffers like more than anyone else can suffer. And then he sacrifices his life. One question the man has to ask him, because he doesn't understand, you know, because he wasn't up there, is, you know, do you regret all the sins of your life? And it's just, it's heart that always breaks my heart when I see that.
And you see him
because he's crying and it's his best friend.
And you see Karras responding by, you know, he's moving the fingers,
squeezing
on
his
his
fingers.
hands.
He's trying to respond that he wants to give a good, one last confession. And
the moment before that, I think, is one of the most powerful, because that is where all of these various plot lines intersect all at once, and it's reflected in the soundtrack. It's a very overlooked scene, but Regan's crying and screaming for her mother. You hear the police coming. The detective comes in the door. The priest is down at the bottom of the stairs. Everything comes together. Everyone's there at the moment that this is resolved, and you just hear this. She's screaming, and the wind's blowing, and the police sirens. That was that always got me at the end. Like, that was the denouement.
Well, yeah, because it just looks like all the air has been cleared.
Right.
You know, all like suddenly it's just over. Like just like that. It's just, and you're like, oh, okay. But I mean, you know, a lot of pieces have gotten cleared off the board.
And the thing is, like, we keep mentioning like the sound design and stuff like that. When he is going down those steps, and that's all you hear is the tumbling. Plus, like, I don't know how Friedkin filmed it, but you just see the tumbling, like the point of view of him going down mixed with the sound. You feel that, you know what I mean? It sounds cheesy, you know, if people, you know, they don't watch film like, you know, the four of us watch film. You can feel falling down every fucking step, because it's
painful.
What, maybe
There's
a good 5 to 10 seconds,
Oscar, man.
And it's mixed, like I said, mixed with, you know, it's just how much more pain can this man go through, and he has to tumble down all those freaking steps, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's just...
And the question that you can easily ask at the end, was the pain worth it? All the pain he's gone through, but the child is saved. You know,
I think Karras would have said yes.
Yeah, I think that. I think they both would have
point.
said yes.
If you think of that, it's what the basic was like this was a war. It wasn't with guns and bombs. It was war of wills, war of faith, war of boom. And when it was over, there's got to be casualties.
Yeah. That was his redemption from all the things that from his lack of faith, from his mother and all that. It's like his one grand gesture.
Yeah, because for a second it grabs a hold of him.
Yeah,
right.
For just a split second, it grabs a hold of him, but he's
able to defeat it or overpower it at least.
He's able to kick it loose. But
I always thought he heard Reagan screaming, like when the devil got him, or the abuse who got him. And then Reagan was screaming about, and that's what snapped him out of it, because he knew, she's still there, vulnerable, to take the dive out the window. I mean, that's. I remember, God, when I was going to a Jesuit prep school, people arguing with a priest over this scene, because a lot of the teachers of Catholic schools at the time in Philadelphia were conflicted.
Yeah,
at that ending, because they said technically, if he beat the devil, he should have won, but he had to die by doing it. Well, wait a minute, where was that? And that was their own, conflict that they were having with the film. Yeah. But we had discussions about it all the time. What is the ultimate, faith type deal, or And to me, it was like he saved Reagan.
Right.
If he sat there and everything else, he could have hurt her, or he could have, and he had a fight to snap it out and throw himself out the window to get away.
Yeah. And at the time, suicide was still a much bigger no-no than it is now in the church. But then there's the whole, the no greater love than to lay your life down for your friend.
Exactly.
And that's just it. I mean, all of these people are rushing to fill this void. I mean, they're jumping into this abyss to save a stranger. They don't know her from, especially Marin. He just literally walks into the house.
Yeah.
Yep.
The same night, he's going to give his life up for a complete stranger. And there's that one scene where they deliver the telegram, and you know what it is. And he's in the woods. And I remember this from the book. He doesn't even open it. He just kind of puts it in his pocket, and he keeps on walking. And in the book, they tell you it's because he's saying goodbye to everything.
Right.
He knows. Which is why I said in the very beginning, within the first 5 minutes of the movie, he finds out that he's going to die.
Right.
And that all of these people would do this for a stranger.
Yeah.
They got it perfect the first time, and this is why. Who was saying that Friedkin said that follow-up possession movies are just shitty. It's not that all of them are shitty. It's that nobody bothered to develop characters like this or a story like this. It focused exclusively. Right? Yeah, you focused exclusively. And there are a couple of movies that have been okay. We talked about Hereditary and then there's some other ones. Like I like Emily Rose.
But that's another one that's based on a real situation.
Yeah.
When you focus on the people,
and
you connect to them, the devastation or the pain or the shock you feel is stronger, because as opposed to seeing a stranger, it still can be shocking. But as a viewer, when you connect to those people, oh shit, I didn't want them to die.
That's what I meant when I said that earlier.
Like I said, 50 years later, when I see him squeezing that man's hand, it breaks my heart every time. It's heartbreaking.
I have a younger family member who asked me about watching it when he was a teenager, and I said, yeah, go ahead. And I heard him screaming, no. And I was at the house, and I walked into the room, and it's when the father's tumbling down the stairs. Because he knew what was coming, and he didn't want him to die.
Yeah.
He really, it hit him hard.
And that's just great writing. Great acting.
But I was like, and I said, "Are you all right?" And he looked at me, he goes, "God damn it, why'd you watch this goddamn movie?" And I said, "Well, because it was a goddamn
Because it's a goddamn masterpiece. That's why.
But and he talked to me about it a few days later, but he was pissed.
Yeah.
You know?
It that part sticks with you, and that is what a problem is. I think now, like with, I'm just saying that, you know, I'm 40, the generation under me, you know what I mean? They if they haven't seen The Exorcist, they know, they just focus on the over the top, the grotesque, the shock value. You sit down, put your fucking phone down, watch it from beginning to end, and focus on these characters, and then you'll realize it's a lot more than just puke and head spinning and stuff like that.
Which is what they look for now.
Yeah.
The
putting the phone down is so
more,
important.
You know, I think that's what really gets to a lot of people, especially if they come back to it a second time. Like, you know, I don't want to be the old fogey of the group. I'm the old fogey of the group. And you know, you know, to watch them come in and see it the first time and blow it up, and it's the ones that will come back again and go, you know, they'll see the beauty in it. I remember seeing two other nephews arguing over the fact, one guy goes, well, I can't believe in it, the devil doing that and everything else. And my second nephew goes, dude, you watch The Lord of the Rings like it's a religion. You know,
shut the hell up. Wow, slap him. Pulled the Will Smith on him.
You can't buy this. I mean, it was amazing to just hear their reaction to it.
Yep.
I gotta come up with a Will Smith overlay or something when somebody says something that's just like completely ridiculous. I just gotta pull the Will Smith over.
And sound effect and everything. Just
oh no.
Yeah, what I wouldn't give for us to be able to host a movie club and just have a bunch of 20-somethings in there in a group watching a movie like that.
Yeah.
I remember arguing with one nephew who didn't want to watch like a black and white film because it was black and white.
Yeah, my brother used to be that way. Yep.
In the 30s, they didn't have color then.
Right.
Here's one more thing. Last thing, the St. Joseph's medal that appears at the end. Friedkin argued that it was the same medal that I guess it was Father Karras' medal that he found in the dirt in Iraq. Made it all the way over to Georgetown, and then finally to Reagan. There's this. I think there's a scene because I have a director's cut, which has like 1 or 2 extra scenes or something like that, and she tries to give it to the other father, Chris McNeil, but in the director's cut, he says maybe you should keep it. You know, and so, you know, maybe a little bit of that faith goes with them, you know, to an uncertain future that, you know, sort of gets picked up in crappier movies. But, you know, that the journey has come all the way from Iraq to Georgetown, you know, and again, for seemingly no reason other than the rationale of, you know, what the demon's argument is. But, you know, the mystery sort of remains unsolved.
Right,
I suppose a perfect movie, a perfect horror movie. I don't know that there'll ever be another like it. I love Hereditary. I think that in many ways is a worthy contemporary. But this movie did it first, and they did it perfect the first time. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Yeah, and what
can you say?
Part 2, notwithstanding, it's like, even if it wasn't as batshit fucking weird as it was, you know what I mean? It would be hard to follow this movie up regardless. So I'll just end when it comes to like the sequels. I'm glad we got Exorcist 3 because it's a great follow-up.
Oh, yeah. Come on, Richard Burton and
I love movies.
I mean, come on, you gotta look on the silver lining. She's got some rocking boobies in that second movie.
Reading the behind-the-scenes stuff of The Exorcist 2 is hilarious. Just how Richard Burton was pretty much half in the bag every time they said action, just to get through it. He couldn't remember any of his lines. Linda Blair's got some funny-ass stories, you know, about the making of that.
It's ironic that he turned around and did a semi-serious turn as the priest in Amityville Horror later.
I love when Linda Blair was talking about the steps.
Why did you have to bring up the fucking Amityville Horror?
Yeah.
You've ruined everything. Where's my Will Smith overlay?
You had to.
You had to bring that up.
Go ahead. Larry.
It's like Bill's the new Rod now. You're gonna remove him from the group.
I just went to the house. Not supposed to
did
do
you?
that, but I just went to the house a couple months ago.
At least you didn't bring up Vampire in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
We gotta get him
I'll
back
bring
on
up
here.
Pluto Nash next.
Yeah, I'd rather you didn't.
Okay.
So,
You're gonna go from one extreme, go to the other.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's truly demonic. What the fuck?
That's it.
All right.
I don't have to show you my power in the beginning. Watch A Vampire in Brooklyn.
Goodbye, John.
My power will build up with
I'm
each coming
closing you out of the show, John. Knock it off.
The power of Eddie Murphy will compel you. The power of Eddie Murphy.
The power of Eddie Murphy will compel you.
Now that that's over with, let me say, no, I think this is as good a place as any to close out for a perfect movie. The one programming note again, the link in description is for the second channel that I've set up for pre-recorded content. This type of thing will go to the original channel, but I've set up a second channel where I'll be doing pre-recorded. I'll be there tomorrow night in the second channel, covering not an equally difficult movie, but a movie with quite a bit of depth. 2001's Frailty, which there's a lot to dissect there, and I'm still in the middle of writing that up, and there's quite a lot to talk about there. So I'm actually kind of glad about that. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. with Frailty on the second channel. We'll be live streaming on Twitter with that and on Twitch. My thanks to the power of Bill Compels You, John K. Alvarez, the horny little devil, and Eric from Hey Internet, Eric here. Thanks once again. This has been our 100th episode, and if you had told me when I first started doing this, speaking into, just my device mic and all that kind of crap that I'd be doing, 100 episodes, I would have told you you've got screw loose. I think I said that most podcasts have a life expectancy of 174 days and don't make it past, I forget what, but it's like 6 months. Yeah. We've got quite a ways to go with this one, and I couldn't be happier about that. So thanks to all of you for being a part.
Yeah, I'll say this, Mike, to prepare for 100 episodes, like I said.
Bye, Sincere.
Bill and John, they've been here, longer than I have, but I went back to listen to the older episodes, and you notice I've been watching the older YouTube stuff, and I said, be proud of where you are, man. You've come a long way since The Mummy in episode 1. Your delivery is a lot better. The live streams are great. The visuals. You've come a long way, man. 100 episodes. Congrats.
Absolutely.
I think what I've enjoyed most are the movies that we're covering. It's just a lot of movies that you're not seeing anywhere else. So if I can get one or two people to check out a movie that they haven't heard of before or haven't gotten around to watching, then this thing, besides its own entertainment value for us, has served its purpose. All right, I think we're going to close it out right now. My thanks to everybody once again. We'll be back at 8 p.m. Thanks to everyone who stopped in on the stream, and all the best, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Peace.